I don't want a pickle. I just want to ride on my motorcycle. Hello, everybody. This is the Noco Moto Podcast, episode number 200 and, what do you think, 76? It's 76 or 77.
I have not been counting for the last 100-something episodes. So.
It doesn't matter. I'm your host, MotoG Pete. With me is your other host, Swiggy.
Yep.
Coming to you from Moto One Podcast Network Studios, recording Suite A, otherwise known as the Tiki Room. Experimenting with some different cameras this week. This might end up as just a side-by-side video of the two of us, worst case scenario. But I want to make a statement about content and AI. I'm going to attempt to use an AI assistant tool to go through the audio, identify when each of us is speaking, and try to auto edit back and forth between the two streams. And if that's true, I will put a disclaimer on the YouTube video that says AI, some form of, algorithm AI thing was used for what I would very gently call part of the creative process, right? Just like mastering is although one of the smaller pieces, a creative part of an audio recording, it is, editing there are creative editing choices in video. And I don't want to put up anything that's AI without blatantly saying it. I say this because I listened to a podcast with some amount of AI on it the other day. I normally don't like to call out other shows, but this was just such an amazing 90 seconds. I have to talk about it. Did you listen to that Motorcycle Madhouse episode, Swigs?
No, I didn't.
Okay, if you don't know, there's this podcast called Motorcycle Madhouse, which is an entire podcast done by some dude and his girlfriend, and I'm not making this up. The whole show is about how cool it is to be in an MC. And he's managed to get hundreds of episodes out of this. But he has a logo, an AI, a Dolly generated logo, which just screams boomer. And he also had it write him like a 30-second theme song, which is amazing. Swigs, have you seen that thing on YouTube, the AI generated "Own the Libs" or "Tonight I'm Gonna Own the Libs" song?
No, I haven't.
It's become somewhat of a sensation, and it's hilariously bad. And there's like a full video of like a dude with a gray beard driving his truck around looking super smug, talking about how he's going to own the libs tonight. It's really something else. But there's this theme song for Motorcycle Madhouse is on that level. And I recommend all of our listeners just listen to that and then the opening 60 seconds of the show, and you'll get the entire vibe of his podcast. Give him a weird spike in numbers for one episode and really confuse this guy. But yeah, speaking of other shows, I knew that they did it, but they took for like a few weeks to put it up. But I don't really consider it real until it's on the RSS feed. Cleveland Moto did their 500th episode.
Whoa, nice.
Yeah, so I want to say congratulations to them for that. I mean, at this point, I think everyone's figured out for a 300th, 400th, 500th episode, whatever. You just do a regular show, but you just acknowledge that it's that milestone, right? Like even us for like 100 and 200, we're like, what are we going to do? But there's not really anything to do for it unless you have some huge crew of people, right? Although having said that, we're starting to get a crew of people. Just kind of like maybe some people didn't think the Tiki Room was real. like a lot more of the Moto 1 stuff is real than people think. I mean, it's true. Like the unpaid interns are now fucking real.
That's true. Yeah.
I know. And they're as dumb as fucking ever. So anyway, yeah, Cleveland Moto, well done. Check out Motorcycle Madhouse. Let's see, what are we drinking this week? I'm having another Jungle Bird. I am on a kick with these things, man. I fucking love this drink. Doing a little experiment putting lemon juice in it instead of lime, because I kind of juiced too many limes the other day and I need to burn through some of it before it goes bad. But, you know, I love this drink. And Swigs, you're rocking some Outlaw.
Yeah, I'm just sticking with the Outlaw because it is not yet.
No, it's noon.
Okay, yeah, I guess it is the afternoon. We are in the PM now, but
speaking of other,
I need to be productive today. So.
I do too. I've got to do some work on the Goldwing. I've got to put some Loctites in places that are screws that are supposed to be holding fluids in that aren't holding them in as well as they should be. And some other things, some wiring. Yeah, I have to do Goldwing wiring work today. The whole plug on the rectifier completely melted and fused itself into just one thing. And there's quite a bit of stuff to do there.
Well, that would explain your charging issues.
It would. Yeah. yeah. Right. Oh, and I was also going to say we're going to try another new thing on this episode. We'll see how well it works, but we're going to try to do a tight 90-minute show and then do a complete show, but then roll straight into bonus content, which will be on the Patreon. I can't promise that this is going to happen, but we're going to give it a shot, see how well the flow works, right? See if we can do that, because we've had some people up their Patreon recently. All of our Patreon people are super fucking awesome, and I really want to do more for them. And I feel like we do a lot of 90-minute shows. 90 minutes is totally a full podcast, right? And the number of people that actually listen all the way to the end are probably on the Patreon anyway, but they're going to get like bonus stuff, you know, where, and I don't know, maybe we'll just do things that we technically can't do on YouTube, right? Like maybe I'll just like flat out say that we're inciting violence or something on the Patreon. But, all right. So, and what are we going to get to this week? We're going to do best worst bike in the week, of course. We are not going to get to MotoGP because I don't even know if Q2 is finished yet in France. It's probably happening as we speak.
Well, the sprint race. No, they would have raced. Everything would have happened started 6 hours.
You're right.
Ago.
Q2 would have had 6 hours ago.
So we're through this. We should be through the sprints, but it'll be through the sprint.
You're right. The sprint has probably just recently. Anyway,
but needless to say, we haven't seen it.
We haven't seen it because it basically hasn't happened in our world. And I want to talk about buying used bikes and what we think the best used bike is in terms of problem-free miles. Right? Mm-hmm. What are sort of the best bikes to lean towards in the used market where statistically you're going to avoid the most sort of previous owner problems? I think that's a good way to go. All right. So are we ready to get to best worst bike in the world this week, Swigs?
Let's do it.
Okay. I know we have a lot of new listeners because, wow, we've had a bump in listeners this week. Normally we put out an episode and then it gets less and less every day in terms of listens until we put out a new episode. But this week it's just been on the up and up and up because we got new listeners who are going through the back catalog. So I will remind these listeners that this is our signature segment where we have each chosen a motorcycle we don't know each other have chosen. It's always a surprise. Now, You may have an issue with that. You may not like it, but it's just a fun way to look at a couple bikes in a way that you might not normally look at them. If you have questions, concerns, thoughts, or just generally want to share something stupid with us, send your emails to contact@nocomotopodcast.com. Not going to put shit for links in the description. And if you're listening to the show the way God intended on the audio podcast only, then you can click through to the send us a text option, and we'll see your text there. All right, Swigs, you have best bike in the world this week,
I do.
and are you ready to reveal it?
I am.
Okay. And the best bike in the world this week is
The Suzuki GSX 8R.
I think we did this like 2 months ago.
I don't think we did.
Well, I think I did the 8S and lumped the 8R in with it. So we may not have explicitly done the 8R, but you know, it's such an awesome bike. It's worth talking about again.
I think it is. So, I saw this bike in the yellow down at Coda.
The yellow's awesome.
And I think so in my personal opinion, having seen the 2025 lineup from all the different manufacturers, outside of like the specialty Yamaha, like red and white, this is the best looking bike. I would even put this above the Triumph Daytona 675 in red in terms of how good the bikes look in person. I can see why I could say some people saying that the Triumph is better, but this is the best looking sport bike. This is the only really kind of true full fairing like budget sport bike that was there. This is the yellow just really, really pops in a way that and it really highlights the fairing in a way that like you don't really get on other bikes. Everything else is kind of going to slim down more and more, but this is just kind of in your face. And there's a lot of parallels that can kind of be drawn between this and the Daytona 675. And it's really kind of what you're looking for. And weirdly, in this case, the Suzuki is kind of the more sensible ride. So this is not a super high performance sport bike. But what this is it's budget friendly and it's incredibly reasonable.
Well, it's like mid 80s on the horsepower, right?
Yes, this is like 82 to 84 horsepower. This is like 10 horsepower less than the Daytona 675.
It's basically a modern take on the CBR 600 F4i, except it only happens to have 2 cylinders.
Yeah, I think the F4i might have significantly more horsepower than this.
They're like 10. They're sub 100 horsepower.
Yeah. But what you get is a very straightforward parallel twin motor with incredibly predictable throttle response and, a torque power curve that's incredibly linear. Even more so because it's ride-by-wire. This is loaded up with all the features. You get, Suzuki's fancy slipper clutch technology. You get all the rider modes. Yeah, as I said, you get ride-by-wire. This is basically just all of the Suzuki racing tech put into just a very sensible motor.
Okay, you said a bunch of very accurate and correct things there. I just have to. It's just a thing with me. Calling a slipper clutch technology is a little ridiculous. if you don't know how like your clutch actually works, when you pull it in, there's essentially just some linkages, and it just pushes a bit in, and your clutch plates come apart. All that happens with the slipper clutch is it just disengages your clutch as the action of your lever going up just essentially makes your clutch just without you have to move the handle just go in and out real quick. It's
Yeah.
essentially a piece of metal in the casing that
So
ramps inwards to push the rod that goes through the motor like in. Like that's it.
yeah, but ultimately,
Slipper clutches aren't fancy. They shouldn't even. It's so fucking easy to put a slipper clutch in a bike. It shouldn't even be an add-on feature.
uh,
If it's designed as part of the engine when the engine is built, there is all it's like close to like it might cost them $6 more to make it that way.
I would prefer that it be a feature because then I could buy a motorcycle without one. Slipper clutches,
No, it's just the people that are getting it are getting charged extra. You're not saving by not having one.
yeah, but then look, if every bike came with a slipper clutch, within like 6 months, people would be selling slipper clutch deletion kits. I promise you.
Yeah, people
Be-
can't help but just fuck with shit. Yeah, this is
well,
true.
more it's more that I don't think a slipper clutch is actually a very significant. Well, we'll sidebar this because this is the best bike in the world this week. This is not
It
the
is.
shit on slipper clutch segments.
I have one question since you've seen it in the flesh. I haven't seen one of these in the flesh yet. How obnoxiously small is the tail on this bike?
It's not that bad. It's pretty reasonable.
It's
It's
better than like the Trident or the Aprilia RS660.
yeah, it's I would say it's a little bit wider than like say like an MT-07.
Okay, so all right, so there is some sort of tail there that all right.
Yeah. The only thing is normally I'm fine with everything being stock, but this bike does have the most egregious um license plate holder and turn signal assembly
Oh,
on
the
the rear.
UFO. Yeah.
This is this is a bike that absolutely needs some kind of tail tidy kit. It's this is just so out there that like yeah, not a, I imagine every single dealer is taking these off at the dealership.
Yeah, I don't know why they can't just start making like the like putting those floating tire huggers on them, you know? Like it's there
Mm,
because by law there has to be a rear fender that goes like 1 inch past the back wheel or something. So you don't, kick rocks into the car behind you. That's it. And yeah.
hmm.
Although quick sidebar, I think I sent you the picture too, but I found my old Super Hawk the
Oh
other
yeah, you
day.
did.
And it just made me so happy because it looks like it looks like the day I sold it. It looks fantastic, and it was mine. It had that little tiny crack underneath the side mirror
Yeah.
that you wouldn't see unless it was pointed out, and that little bit of paint that was chipped off the front fender. So I was like, "This is my bike." But the dude left all the turn signals and everything completely stock. Didn't fuck with it at all. He didn't put any stupid tank guards on it. He didn't change out the handlebars or put on dumb weights. He didn't take off the side mirrors. None of that shit. Just left it the way it's supposed to be. I was so happy.
Nice.
But anyway, it was parked outside, and I have seen it in that spot parked outside several times driving by, and I've thought to myself like, man, that's just like my old Super Hawk. And this time I just stopped and got out and was like, is this actually my Super Hawk? And sure enough, it was. I should have knocked on the door. Next time we're riding through Loveland, we should knock on the door. I should just do one of those, like, look, if you want to sell it, I'll buy it back. Like, just leave him with my number. But anyway, back to the Suzuki. Yeah, this is kind of so I've said for ages, if you want to produce a hit, look at what Honda was doing 5 years ago. In terms of performance, size, weight, price, this is basically a CBR 650R.
Yeah, it's around
It just happens to be 2 cylinders instead of 4. That's really it. So maybe it won't be quite as smooth as a 650R, but maybe that's a feature, not a bug, because when you have a little bit less power, you kind of want it to feel like more power, right? So that twin motor is going to vibrate. It's not going to be quite as good as the 650 in terms of how smooth it is. But I mean, all bikes are pretty fucking smooth these days. I've been riding the Rebel around a lot, and that 300, every time I get on it, I'm like, how is a single cylinder this fucking smooth? But
right, yeah. I mean, ultimately, this is 84 horsepower for a sport bike sounds like it's not very much, but it's more than enough to get into trouble. And I think
I think 84 is, for about 450 pounds, is the magic number where you'll never notice a lack of power.
Yeah, they'll never, outside of actual racing, there will never be a scenario where this bike is lacking in power.
I think it'll never be lacking in power in amateur racing.
Well, yeah, I mean, essentially,
there's no way I could keep this thing pinned around a track ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think this bike might be too powerful for the Twins Cup.
It definitely is. Those are like around 500cc. Yeah. Those are kind of 4 to 500, 450. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so ultimately this is another angle on the
Wait, no, that's not true. No. They were rocking like SV650s and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they were doing MT-07s and SV650s were kind of the go-to bikes.
I haven't followed Moto America Twins Cup forever. I'm actually not sure what they're doing these days. They may have bumped it up for this new class of bike.
Potentially. But yeah, ultimately, this is just another angle on kind of the sensible sport bike. I would say this is another flavor of what you can kind of go for compared to the Daytona 675. And I think of all the bikes that are kind of like for sale right now, and with how expensive everything is going, like this is a very reasonable offering.
Yeah. Well, I completely agree. I'm gonna have to get back. I keep banging this drum, but in a post horsepower world, all a sport bike has to do is look awesome and actually be fast. Right? Not fast on a spec sheet, fast in the real world. And it turns out, at weighing 450 pounds and having the type of gearing that this has and 84 horsepower, it is fucking fast. You're going to fucking smoke Corvettes all day. Those assholes in 5-liter Mustangs going down the interstate with their goddamn Cartoon Network stickers and shit, you will blow right fucking by them on this thing. All they've done is fucking flash the ECU in their car, maybe, and put on an aftermarket exhaust. That's all those guys have done. That's it. And then they bought some bodywork kits, wheels, and stickers. maybe a spoiler that is actually hurting their performance under 120 miles an hour.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think a spoiler will only hurt your top speed.
Right, but it's also not creating meaningful downforce to like give you more grip coming out of turns and things,
Yeah.
whatever, until you're at a certain speed. So it's only, unless you're breaking the law, a spoiler is only a liability.
Yeah. Which I'm still in favor of. Like,
oh yeah, yeah, it's ridiculous. I'm just saying that this bike, just stock as you buy it, is still really fucking fast.
oh yeah, it is still beating, it is still beating like $80,000 sports cars off the line. Like in quarter miles and half miles.
I mean, I don't think it's going to run 10s on a quarter mile, but probably like 11 and a half. I mean, it's still fucking fast. Like, the only thing that's going to beat you is a purpose-built like drag race car. That's it. Well, and more powerful motorcycles.
Yeah.
You're looking up quarter mile times?
So it's 11.9.
I wasn't too far off. 11.9. Sure, yeah. I mean, 10 is fucking fast, okay? Like,
Yes.
under 11 seconds is ridiculous. Under 12 is fucking fast. It's fast. So, awesome. Right. What's the price on this thing?
To put it in perspective, a Dodge Hellcat is 11.7.
Right.
Like, and you're doing this for under 10 grand. Like, that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think a stock R1 was like just a tiny hair under 11. It was like 10,999,999, So we're not talking about a lot here, and it's definitely breaking 100 miles an hour in that quarter mile for sure. Probably does like 107 in the quarter mile, something like, I don't know. Man, no, it's got to be more than that if it's running under 12. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
We're in the weeds.
We're in the weeds. What's the price on these things? I remember it being very reasonable, like 9,000, 9,500.
It's in that, like, yeah, it's like 96, 9,800.
Okay, so we're sub 10 grand. It's weird. It's like 6 years ago, all the bikes in this category were, the Z1, was Z1000 was really the poster child for this. An inline 4 900 that was making like 117 horsepower or something for $9,000, $9,500, blah 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 blah, right? But with this, I would trade definitely the styling for this one. I would trade the no arrow for the arrow that's on this with the fairing. I would, and honestly, I'm not going to notice the lack of power that much from the 904 to the 800 twin. I'm just not going to notice the power difference that much. If anything, this might have just a little bit more torque. So until you're right at the top end of the power, it may even like feel like more power out of this.
I don't know about that, but it would certainly be on par.
Yeah. So it's also hard to do a comparison with what was happening 5 or 6 years ago because the economic landscape was just so different.
Yeah.
And credit and rates and everything. It was just so different. But, if someone on my block bought one of these, I'd be real excited to ask him if I could take it for a spin.
Yeah.
I sure would. All right, so we're trying to keep this in 90 minutes. We want to go to worst bike in the world this week.
Let's do it.
Okay. You are going to fucking love this, Swigs.
Okay.
And the worst bike in the world this week is Bruff Superior.
Which one?
Exactly. Old Bruff Superior.
Okay.
Okay, so when people have conversations and people talk about sacred cows, Bruff comes up a lot. And I took a deep dive on Bruff this week because I just realized, I only know the things about Bruff Superior that everybody knows about Bruff Superior. I know T. Lawrence had like 4 of them and died on one. I know that they're basically like they're all worth like 200, like a cheap one is like $110,000. A lot of them are selling in $300,000 range. We know that there's a new company which is called Bruff Superior, but is in no way Bruff.
This makes me wonder, like, should, like, revered historical brands, like, do we need to have, in the same way that, like, we can declare buildings, like, historical sites, like,
Yeah,
should we be
should
able
the
to,
royal family just
like,
go, listen,
we're declaring this a historical brand.
like
we're
retiring a number.
Yeah,
like retiring a race
we're
number.
going to retire the trademark. Nobody's allowed to have this for the rest of time. This is now...
Right, you can't fuck up this history for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like this. You know, I think the culture most likely to do this would be the Japanese.
Yeah.
So... anyway, I got into a deep dive on Bruff Superior. One, because I realized I didn't know as much as I thought I knew about Bruff. And second, I've really become interested in the 1930s and 1920s leader bike craze. So different displacements have gone in and out of fashion many, many, many times. And in the 1930s, with like the Ariel Square 4 and other stuff, there was a 1 liter, but not just a 1 liter, a 1 liter 4-cylinder craze in motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
Because what most people know about Bruff is they made a bike called the SS 100. And this was the cream of the crop. This had the JAP 1 liter V-twin that made, I don't know how much horsepower, like 50 or 60 or something, did 100 miles an hour or whatever it did, right? And then there was the SS80, which was like a different motor, wasn't quite as fast, but still pretty fucking fast for the day. But Bruff made a number of other models. And I'm going to leave the SS80 and the SS100 alone because that's the Bruff you know. I want to talk about the Bruff you don't know. And it's not the company that existed before, because before Bruff Superior, so not Old Man Bruff, but Old Man Bruff, there was Bruff Motorcycles. And then his son took over the company and decided he was only going to make superior motorcycles, and so renamed the company Bruff Superior. Bruff decided that the SS100 wasn't good enough. It wasn't enough to basically only have the most extreme sport bike of the time. He needed to create a few more motorcycles. So there's also a Bruff Superior called the 1150. And this is also a fantastic motorcycle. They made like 800, 700 of these, and a lot of these were used with sidecars, and the cops drove those around, and that was successful as well, right? They were expensive, but they were tough and reliable and built to last. So the 1150s are still worth quite a lot and very desirable bikes. But then there's 2 other models. And they are weird as fuck, Swigs. And they are glorious disasters. And these are the Bruff Superiors that you wouldn't buy no matter how much money and opportunity you had at them. The first one I would like to talk about is the Bruff Golden Dream. The Bruff Golden Dream was Bruff's attempt, way ahead of its time, to make the ultimate cruiser. To go, I'm not going to make a British style bike. I'm going to make a Harley Davidson style cruiser. And I'm going to make the best, fastest, biggest one. And I'm just waiting for you to find a picture of this thing because I really need you to look at this bike.
Got one right here.
There it is. Now tell me what you notice about this bike. What stands out on this versus what you normally associate with Bruff?
This is.
It's weird, isn't it?
So, we've got a shaft drive connected to a straight 4.
Nope.
It's not a straight 4? What is this then? What is this motor?
At the time, they called it an H motor. So, Bruff... Well, let's get to the motor last.
Oh, I mean like a... I mean like, it looks like a flat 4 stood up on its... up on end.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, I said straight 4. Yeah, not straight 4. Sorry. Yeah, flat 4.
It's like a boxer, but
it's like somebody
instead
took
of
a
going
Subaru,
out this way,
it's like somebody
this way and this way.
It's like somebody took like a Subaru, like an old Subaru Legacy motor, and then just like
Stood it up on its side.
With a shaft.
I know.
Okay.
So, this has, unlike other bikes of the time, it has a plunging rear suspension. So that weird shit at the back there.
Oh my god! Yeah, what is that?
I know. I can't even fully figure out how it works. It still has a sprung saddle because apparently this rear suspension just didn't work as intended.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have a swing arm. It's like a rigid frame with this like plunger mechanism built into it. It's fucking weird. It basically has a 1930s Harley Davidson front and rear fender. And these forks are what Bruff called their castle forks, which is more or less a ripoff of some Harley Davidson forks. So imagine like Springer forks, but they're kind of like leading link forks almost, but like the leading mechanism is like up near the light rather than down at the bottom.
Yeah. Okay.
Then it's got what I can only describe as a Harley Davidson tank.
Yeah.
And then this bizarre shaft drive motor, which is, again, basically like a Goldwing motor, but the cylinders are stacked on top of each other instead of being side by side. So this motor was commissioned by Bruff to be built by JAP, and JAP said themselves that this motor would never bloody work. They said this whole bike was stupid and they wanted no part of it. But they went along anyway. This project was rushed.
So sort of like when an actor says, like, actually, could you not credit me on the movie?
Well, war was coming because this was supposed to come out in like 1939. So that didn't happen. But the thing is, it wasn't going to come out anyway. Forget the war. It wasn't going to come out. In 1938, they took it to a big auto show, right? And they're like, we've got to get one put together to put on show, right? So they take this bike. It might be this one that we're looking at, because there's only 4 of these in existence right now. And they were all painted gold. And they took it to the show, and everyone lost their minds. Like, oh my God, this is amazing. Decades later, it was revealed. Well, it may have been, it was known to some people at the time, but this engine had no internal parts.
Oh,
when they took it to the show,
shell?
the engine literally didn't work.
Okay.
It was just empty casings. Decades later, when the museum that had it, they kind of found out that there were some parts to make it work. They opened up the engine casing, and inside was a handwritten note that basically just said, "Fuck you." Because the dudes at JEP were like, we really don't believe in this project. I don't think it literally said "fuck you." I can't find out what the note actually said. Isn't this a great piece of motorcycle history?
This is good.
But people will only say that there was a rude and lewd note left inside the engine casing.
Nice.
I know. So if it didn't literally say "fuck you," because this would have been an early use of the word "fuck," even if it didn't literally say "fuck you," it said it more or less had that sentiment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they ended up building 4 of these, and the project was scrapped. But I don't think it was even going to get off the ground had the war not happened. The suspension didn't fucking work. It doesn't really look totally comfortable as a motorcycle. Other bikes like the Ariel Square 4 had been perfected and did work well, right? They had really great workhorse bikes like the 1150 with its super cool side valve motor, so like the pipes are coming out of the engine casings like they do on an Ariel Square 4.
Yeah.
Like they're not like the header pipes aren't up high, that they kind of looks like they just kind of come out below the fins somewhere. It's cool shit. Kind of like an F-head motor, but not. Anyway, so this is Brough Superior Disaster number 2. Before this, there was another equally ridiculous disaster. And this one actually had a great engine in it. Swigs, I ask you now to Google the Brough Superior Austin 4. So British car buffs will know that there's a wonderful legacy behind a little name, the Austin 7, which now kind of exists as the Caterham 7, and it's undergone a lot of changes over the years, but the Austin 7 is kind of the original British, like, thoroughbred race car. And the Austin 7 was like a 750 cc inline 4 engine built on a ridiculous frame that just doesn't even look whatever today. But Brough decided to put this engine, this liquid-cooled inline 4, into a motorcycle in the mid-1930s. And he liked the gearbox with this motor so much, he decided not to change it. And as a result, did one of the most ridiculous workarounds ever. Rather than just simply design a different transmission for this motorcycle, have you spotted it yet, Swigs? This is another shaft-driven motorcycle.
Wait.
Now you're seeing it.
Oh my god. What?
This
Why?
motorcycle has 2 rear wheels spaced like 4 inches apart So the
Hey,
the drive shaft goes in between the two rear wheels with only just so much clearance. So they
wait,
and
so
then it splits.
does this bike have a rear diff?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so just every time you turn, you're just slipping a rear wheel?
Yeah,
Okay. That's a choice.
it's a strong choice. Yeah. And
Look
then
at this
this
fucking transmission. Like,
oh, it's something else. And then look at that front radiator. Like built onto the back of there's no air going over that radiator. Like, why would you put a radiator there?
this
I know.
this is
Can you believe this didn't sell either?
shocking.
There's also like I think there's 7 of these that still exist. I think 8 were built. No. No, I think 8 were built, 2 were scrapped, and one of them that was scrapped, someone basically like recovered most of the pieces of it and have essentially rebuilt it by hand. So they say 7 out of the original 8 exist.
I like how they just took the engine, like the engine gauges, and they didn't have space on the handlebars for them, so they just
They're
shoved
just on
them.
the side,
They just, on the side of the
above
air
the
box,
battery,
like
the
above
comically large battery.
yeah. This is worse than redneck engineering. I've seen far more elegant solutions from rednecks than
Oh, there are home built tractors that are more elegant than this. Yeah. When you think Bruff Superior, is this what comes into your mind, Swigs?
no. It is
No.
not.
You got to get a picture of it from the rear. Like it is super uncomfortable looking cuz I think they even did something really awful where like the two rear wheels share like I think the yeah, like there's a bubble in the middle, so the yeah, see it looks like 2, but if you get right behind it, the actual rear mudguard, the rear fender is actually one joined piece with like this ridge in the thing of it. I to be a little bit fair to them, like as it's shown here, I think the bike was intended as kind of a replacement for the 1150, so it was mostly going to ride around with a sidecar. So the amazing steering problems you would have with these, like, because like the back end of this is basically like the Dodge Tomahawk, right?
Look, I
Yeah, but you're having emotional issues with this.
but why 2 wheels?
I know.
Cars
I know.
existed back then. You could just put. Why didn't you just put a car tire on the rear?
Well, there's
Like,
well, no, because they needed to mount the engine centrally, right? Because it's so big and heavy, and he didn't want to redesign the gearbox and the drive shaft. So he was like, I can't have one wheel, right? Because then we got to make like a 90-degree angle. But that's ridiculous because it still has to make 2 90-degree angles to get to the wheels. So there's no power savings either.
yeah, why not just do 290 degrees to one big wheel?
Right.
This makes no sense. This is terrible.
Well, and you can't say that, like, budgeting and avoiding developing a new transmission would be like because this was the most expensive motorcycle brand in the world at the time.
Yeah. Like,
These things are like the equivalent of like $60,000 today or something. Like they were crazy expensive.
you could have also just picked another fucking motor.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe not go so far down this insane rabbit hole of design.
Well, again, it was all about big displacement 4 cylinders in British bikes at this time. That was just the rage. And they were like, and there were so many specialty engine builders. It was very, very common for motorcycle makers to get engines from a company that just made engines, and they would build the tanks and the frames and the rest of it.
Right, yeah.
This is one of the reasons that I love Velocet so much, is they made everything. When you bought a Velocet, everything was Velocet. Oh, if I had stupid money to throw at an old British bike, it would 100% be a Velocet. It just doesn't even come close for me. But yeah, isn't this fucking wacky? It's hard to put myself in the mind of someone in the 1930s looking at this, because there was less tradition at the time, right? Motorcycles were still kind of a newer thing. And it was like, oh, let's just like put some radiators just directly in front of your knees. Sure.
I mean, this is kind of like barely like, I mean, it is worth pointing out that like a lot of people at this date and that in this time were kind of in like a post-Victorian mindset. Like, remember, like, these people's parents thought that the future was air travel by Zeppelin. So,
well, there's that, but also, like, this was a time of severe austerity for the general British public.
mm-hmm.
Like, from a couple years before the First World War until like basically the beginning of the 60s, life was not super awesome for the working class in Britain. So just the fact that this thing existed, that like there were probably people that saw these go by and be like, why does it's got a sidecar and 2 rear and like 3 wheels on the bike itself, and they probably saw one carrying a spare wheel too, and were like, why does this person get so much rubber? Right? Aren't we rationing this kind of shit? Right? Yeah, I don't know. I have no more words. It's just a ridiculous thing. There are parts of it that are somewhat elegant. Like, the handlebars, headlight, tank on this one are really nice and pleasing. I love these kind of bathtub rear wheel fenders in general, whether it's the Triumph 21 or this particular one we're seeing, because there was no solid single design. Like, we just saw one of these that had one gigantic radiator and this one with 2 radiators, but like, they didn't build enough of these to really 100% figure it out. But generally, every Bruff that was built to different specs anyway.
Yeah. Well,
so
I think that can be overplayed a little bit, because when you see anything handmade today, it's a big deal because of the fact that we could have automated it or like stamped it, and because of that, the fact that it was handmade and the extra labor went into it raised the price. But when everything is handmade, the fact that something is handmade and slightly fancier isn't as big a flex, because there is no saved opportunity cost there. So it's not as big a deal to be like, look at this gorgeous handmade tank. Every tank was handmade.
Well, this is true, but these Bruffs were kind of tailored like suits. They were made to customer specifications. Mm-hmm. Which, if you're dealing with a company like Velocet, you may have had the opportunity to say, I want this color, or, can you make the handlebars a little longer or shorter, whatever. But generally, they were just kind of making bikes. And if they decided to make it a little bit different, they'd be like, we'll have this, this one. It's a little bit different, but like, here you go. And also, people were more competent at, fabricating shit or having someone in their town that could fabricate shit. So it's not hard to believe that someone would just buy a bike and then alter it custom themselves rather than buying aftermarket parts or whatever. They'd be like, well, I can't deal with these handlebars. Let's get out the hacksaw.
Yeah. Or just have a guy in town who's good with steel who could do it.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't have much else to say about these things. You really just have to look up this bike yourself and just, like the Matrix, it's something you just have to experience for yourself. You have to just take a dive on these two particular fucking bikes, because holy shit, there's something else.
I mean, they kind of look like if somebody was making like a Jules Verne silent film, like for the time traveler, and they wanted to like make a vehicle of the future. Like, this is what they would have come up with at the time.
Yeah, there is a little bit of that. There's a little sort of steampunk kind of, I don't know.
It's almost sort of, yeah, this might be like, there's a lot of this that looks like something Captain Nemo would have had.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely more Captain Nemo than Captain America.
Yeah.
Anyway, should we move on to our discussion topic? What kind of
Sure.
time are we at right now? What's the clock say?
We're kind of like 55 minutes, something like that.
That's perfect. We can do this for half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's say you don't have a lot of money and you want a new motorcycle this year. So you're like, you know what? I'm going to buy used, and I don't mind going a little bit older. I just want something cool, and I'll look for that deal. What are the best sort of things to go for in terms of not running into a problem, right? So you could say, for example, I was just listening to Cleveland Moto, and they're talking about the well-documented shit that goes on with 90s to early 2000s BMWs and their ABS problems. So like, hey, you might see a really great fucking deal on a BMW, but this might also turn into a ridiculous disaster that you're going to regret, right? So what are the bikes that you'll buy that are least likely to have previous owner problems or just like weird maintenance problems and costs that you don't foresee? Like, what are the safest, like, non-lemon bets you could make in the used markets? Mm-hmm. And I think half the viewers right now are raising their hands and going, well, just buy a Honda. Of course, just buy a fucking Honda. But outside of that, right, what do we do? Right? Like you said last summer when Dad was going to take the Valkyrie for a ride. You're like, okay, before you ride this bike, here's what you need to know. Nothing. It's a Honda. Right? Which is so accurate. But I've got a couple thoughts. But, secondhand markets, can't believe anything that the guy is telling you. Right? What seems like a safe bet to you?
A safe bet for me. That is not.
It's fine.
So for the audio only listeners, Peter is mixing a cocktail right now.
I'm finished.
Anyway, I think generally any sort of pedestrian parallel twin is generally going to be a good bet. So
No, that's not true at all. Swigs, would you, in your right mind, recommend to anybody right now that they just buy a CB350?
okay, well that's going a little bit older. That's a little bit different. No.
Well, right. That's what I'm saying. We got to dig into this.
Okay, so what I'm talking about is more. So definitely any sort of parallel twin that's like 10 to 20 years old. That's not any sort of weird. That's not weird. So like any kind of any of the CB500 motors that are parallel twins are going to be rock solid. Again, but I think that also applies to. I'm actually trying to think of what the other big parallel twins were, because Honda really kind of did a lot of those. One thing I wouldn't take for granted, for example, would be like an MT-07, or like when they were like FCs. Not because they're bad motors, but because the profile of the person who bought
They were
them,
hooligan bikes.
They were hooligan bikes, and you're more likely.
So right out, we can cut out anything with a hooligan reputation.
Yes, because if you go for those, you're gonna find all sorts of things, and it's not even that the motors are unreliable; it's that you're gonna have dumb shit like completely shot wheel bearings and like stripped gears from people who don't know how to shift properly. You know, the biggest thing about that is like every R6
fucked up shift forks from people skipping second gear.
Yeah. So anything without a hooligan reputation, you're going to be more likely to be solid.
So right there, that cuts out all the sport inline fours.
Except I would probably put a little bit more faith in the Hondas, not because of.
Well, let's start with the hardest one then. If we're gonna go for a sport bike, what's the safest bet sport bike?
A Honda from like 2005 to 2015. And not for anything about Honda's engineering, but because every moto journalist shit on the CBRs for being less performant, and therefore that steered the wrong crowd away from those bikes. So the owners are going to be more sensible. Like if you had to pick between sight unseen, a Fireblade and an R1, or a ZX-10R, what are you going for?
Right.
Like, 15-year-old of any of those bikes, it's just a roll of the dice. Like,
it doesn't have to be 10 to 15 years old. I mean, we could say like from any time, right? You know, like there's a certain person who might say, well, you know, I'll call a CB750 a sport bike, and they're so simple. Just get one of those.
Mm-hmm.
I strongly disagree with that, but whatever. Let's say, okay, so we're thinking like an 05 to 010 Honda 05 to 2015 CBR, because that was sort of Honda's lamest period.
Essentially, yeah.
Well, no, there were still some pretty hot CBRs up until like 2009, 2011-ish.
It doesn't matter what the reality was.
Like the 929s were pretty hot.
It doesn't matter what the reality was. It matters what the perception was.
Right. So the CBRs were still hot shit until at least 2011, 2012. Then they kind of started becoming the boring bike. But no, like all through, like, it weirdly wasn't until they got to the full 1 liter, right? But when it, like, the 929 was hot shit. So I wouldn't go back that far. Okay, so if you're going to do a sport bike, yeah, like a 2013 Fireblade is the one to get.
Mhm.
Okay, let's go with a dirt bike. What's going to be the most problem free? I think it's just a Honda XR of any kind.
Yeah, I think basically anything air cooled, if it runs, if it's a one kick bike and it's air cooled, it kind of doesn't matter what kind of shape it's in because
Will it start in the driveway? You can deal with everything else.
yeah, can you put your hand on the motor and make sure it's cold and then get a good cold start out of it? Then you're kind of set.
Yeah, I guess dirt bikes are so simple. There's not like weird shit you've got to look for.
It's also kind of a low commitment because like even if you've got a like unless the head is like completely fucked, like there has to be some sort of catastrophic damage, and otherwise you're just kind of not in, you're just not out of a lot of money, so it doesn't really matter too much
All right, then. Let's go with a.
unless you buy something exotic and then you're yeah, so I get anything big four, you're basically fine.
So, touring bike. And we have to disqualify Gold Wings.
I think that's fair,
Besides a Gold Wing, what, because we know Gold Wings, we were saying like Corvettes, they kind of lead charmed lives. They tend to be owned by the kinds of dudes that do all the maintenance meticulously, or at least pay for it to be done meticulously. It's just a thing you see over and over and over again. So the question is, do you just look for the cleanest bike you can find? I
I think what you do is you look for a bike with the correct number of miles on it. So,
I really want to find a model though. Like
um, yeah, I mean, so like, I think you just stick to big four Japanese bikes.
I think we should just add the correct number of miles to all of these. So like if you're buying a 2000 and 12 Fireblade for example, I think if there's less than 25,000 miles you need to be suspicious.
I think you want to find a bike that's between 1,000 and 3,000 miles per year.
Yes.
Anything less than that is very suspect. Anything more than that is probably. Well, I think if it's a newer bike and it's like 3,000 miles per year, you're probably in a good spot. But I think definitely older bikes with suspiciously low mileage should be avoided.
Okay. Right. So the Goldwings, so non-Goldwing touring bike. So I would generally steer away from Harley Davidsons, not because of the fucking twin cam motor issues that people are like, if it's not a problem now, it's gonna be a problem on this bike. Like, I just don't fucking believe that Harley put out these motors for like 20 fucking years and there's this big of a problem with them. Like, it's just not, whatever. Plus, a lot of people that buy these bikes just aren't going to put that many miles on them anyway. But people fuck with Harleys so much. So I would say that any Harley touring bike, Bagger, whatever, Road King, something Glide, whatever, would be okay if it's still mostly stock. I would say a touring bike, if I was going to buy something and just expect it to work with no problems, I think a Harley Davidson past 2008-ish, where like all the fuel injection is worked out, works well, all that's none of that's a problem, but the bike is mostly stock. Like when people
Yeah.
start going like, "Well, but it's stage 4." I'd be like, then I'm just not interested anymore. I
So the biggest problem with those bikes is that once they do get modified, for one thing, you're never going to know kind of all the modifications that have been done and which ones are really really dumb. But secondly, with every bike being modified, there's no longer a known quantity and reputation to that motor anymore. So, how often should you change your oil when you've changed the amount of power the motor's getting, when you're changing the back pressure, and when you're changing the airflow, and when you've changed the compression ratio or the displacement and you've messed with it? And also, you then combine that with what is often suspiciously low miles.
right.
How often did this motor run on like 3-year-old oil? Because the guy only put 1,000 miles on it in that time, or 500 miles in that time, and then it switched owners.
And
And the next
2-year-old
owner,
gas and
and the next owner didn't change the oil right away, and he ran it again, and he just, there's so many.
right, but these are things that can happen with any bike, right?
Well, yes, but with every other bike, but with most bikes, especially these kind of touring bikes, engine mods are not as common. The motor itself is generally stock, and it's accessories that change. So those bikes, if you've just got a service history, you're generally going to be good. But I think it's a little bit different with the Harleys. But also, all other things being equal, unless you have that service history, the Harleys are a little bit more of a question mark.
So what would you go with instead?
For like a cruiser, like a touring cruiser, or
I mean, if we're explicitly getting rid of Goldwings in this conversation, then it's easy for me. I'd go with the 1800cc Valkyrie, but that's a cheat.
That is a cheat.
I mean, you want to talk about a bike that really gets babied, or even better, the F6B is the ultimate buy with confidence, right?
Yes,
Do you
absolutely.
think there's an F6B for sale anywhere right now that's a gamble on what condition the motor's in? No, they're all perfect. Buy any of them with confidence. Even a crashed one I would buy with confidence. The F6B owner is just the ultimate example, because that's not just a Goldwing guy. That's like a really passionate, like super intense Goldwing guy. That's a special breed of Goldwing guy who's just even more attentive to shit. He's like, I don't just have a Goldwing. I've got the bagger Goldwing. Like, yeah.
Well, yeah, because he's also passed through the filter, because he said, I want this bike, but I don't want to just walk into a dealership and say, like, I've got great credit, and then they get directed to the fully dressed top of the line Goldwing and pay for the bullshit undercoating and get scammed on every dealer fee. Yeah. This guy said
on his third oil change, he paid for the engine shampoo. Right?
This is the guy who walked into the Honda dealership and he said, "Yeah, I want the Goldwing. I want to buy a Goldwing." And they said, "Oh, well, here, we'll show you this." He said, "No, I want that one."
Right.
So that guy he's self-filtered into a level of credibility.
I will say, if you're gonna buy a used Goldwing, it is worth paying an extra $1,200 to $1,500 to get the 1800cc motor, not like the current one, but the old um, uh,
The
24 valve. The current is 48.
No, the old one was 12 valve. The current one's 24.
Oh, is that true?
6 times 4.
Oh, you're right. Shit, I'm getting the math. It's Goldwings have so many valves. It's easy to round. Anyway, for the big reason that they actually, even though it's new or whatever, like the maintenance on it, the big pain in the ass thing that you have to do with an older Goldwing is if it's a 4-cylinder or a 6 or a 1500 is the belts. And on the 1800, it's a chain, and it basically just never needs anything except occasionally just take the cover off and inspect it. But oh my God, it's a fucking thing to do the belts on a Goldwing. So you can buy a 1500 for almost no money. But if someone tells you that you got to pay an extra $1,200 because they had the belts done, get that one. Or just get an 1800. Because the chain is just in an oil bath. And it's just good for life, essentially. Just make sure there's fucking lubricant for that chain in the thing, and you're good.
You know, if you're buying a Goldwing, unless you're buying one that is like 15 years old, you know, you are kind of putting yourself in a position where, like, you're buying an 1800cc motorcycle, right? Like, at a certain point, you can't buy into luxury and be a massive cheapskate. Like, you should probably price in some.
You kind of can now, though. Like, for $6,000, you can get a GL 1800 with like 104,000 miles. And it's like buying a Honda Accord with 104,000 miles. You're like, we're at best halfway through this bike's, at worst halfway through this bike's life. Like, we've got a ways to go.
No, to a degree, yes. But, like, I think if you're buying a newer bike and you're putting some money into it, like, there is a certain price point at which you should stop thinking, like, okay, I just dodged this and then I'm going to put, like, 20,000 miles on this and I'm going to sell it before I have to do the maintenance. Like, at a certain point, it's time to stop being a cheapskate. Now, for us, like, our notion of what luxury is incredibly modest.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, our idea of luxury starts with sort of like that old Monty Python sketch, right? You know, like, oh, you had shoes, luxury. You know?
Right. But if you're going to drop like $8,000 to $10,000 on a used Goldwing and you're going to bulk at like a $1,500 belt change after 50,000 miles, that, yeah, fucking get over it.
Right.
Let's be realistic about what it actually costs for some of these things.
I mean, there's also a philosophy of like, well, I'm buying this GL 1500 for $2,800. I could spend $1,500 and get the belts done, or there's every chance this thing's going to do another 26,000 miles before the belt goes. I'll just ride it into the ground for $2,800, right? I mean, you know, if someone said this bike's only $2,500, but you will get 26,000 miles out of it, you take that deal.
This is why the used market is in such crisis right now. Like,
well, the weird thing is too is that on those bikes, I believe for the GL 1500, it was something like 80,000 miles or 25 years or something for replacing the belts.
Mm.
So you could probably just go 140,000 miles or 50 years and not replace them, right? Because it's Honda.
I don't think it quite works that way.
I don't know. Anyway, point is, yeah, if you're going to get a wing, spend a little bit of money and get a slightly newer one because they only get, like, again, the ones from the 70s are awesome and they just get twice as good within every generation. So you'll be happy that you spent the money. But again, we're leaving Gold Wings out of this conversation. What would you think about buying a sort of mid-production Victory?
That
I don't think there are many like known issues with the engines. It's pretty solid shit. I think there's a very healthy, like you can still get parts, and I think you still can for like another 20 years or something.
I don't know if that's true.
Isn't it like? Well, I can't remember how many numbers of year, how long it is out of production. Is it 12 years out of production by law? Like Polaris has to supply spares.
I believe it's 10.
Is it 10? Well, anyway, we're still within that.
I don't know if we are.
What are you talking about? They were selling them in 2019. We went to MotoGP and there was a Victory tent in 2019.
Oh, I guess they announced it in 2017. Was it that? I thought it was older than that, but okay.
They announced it, but they didn't actually stop it till like 2019.
Okay.
So,
okay, yeah. So So I think it's gonna be heavily dependent on the owner.
So if you bought one right now, you could, like, if I bought a Victory Vision right now for $3,600, I could look up what the things that I would need. And just buy them and sit on them. And we also know that for usually like a decent decade or so afterwards, like usually when these things go out of production, like they don't have to supply them anymore, someone usually comes in and buys up the rest of the spares and the molds or whatever, and then has a nice little cottage industry just making higher priced spares for things after that. I mean, that's how you can still get stuff for like 60s and 70s Hondas. Honda doesn't make that shit.
Right. Yeah, I think it depends, and I think it's going to be, I think the owner...
I've got the answer. Hold on. I've got it. I think the best buy right now for reliability and all that stuff is a Victory, because there's still part support and all that stuff. They will be very cheap. The owners of Victory, kind of like the F6B guys, they're like, I want an American motorcycle. Oh, here's a Harley Davidson. No. That one, right?
Mm-hmm.
They pass through the filter. You can still get the spares. I would buy with confidence any Victory touring bike where the owner still has the manual, toolkit, and both original keys.
Yeah.
I mean, manual, toolkit, and both original keys, like, ups any bike, but I don't know that I would necessarily buy, like, an older BMW, even if they had that stuff, because there's just weird shit with those ones, right?
Yeah, because it's not going to be as much in the owner's control.
Right.
But, yeah, I would say, I think it goes more extreme. I think if you have those things, then you're in good shape. But I think if you buy like a Victory that's passed through like 4 people's hands, I would be more suspect of it than I would in other bikes.
It's still a thing though but we could say we'll just buy any one owner bike where all the keys, manual, and whatever are present, blah 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 blah. Yeah, sure. We can go through that list, but
I
let's just
wouldn't think anywhere near as much of buying a Honda that's been through 3 or 4 owners than I would something that's less common.
Yeah, but I mean, who knows some of the shit that we've owned? Like, I would I think in a touring bike, I think the deal right now is with a Victory because there's still part support and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I would say definitely shy away from anything that is. I would say shy away from the Japanese stuff that was short lived or kind of one off.
You know, I was also a thing about the Victories I just want to put in there. I was driving yesterday and a Victory Vegas came by me. And I was really happy to see it. It came by and I was like, look at this thing. Look at this, like, basically what would be a custom fucking show bike, but this is just how they came. The thing was completely stock. And I was like, look at these ridiculous, like, 5-spoke wheels, but the spokes aren't straight. They've got that weird, like, blade curve to it, that fan curve to it, and the high handle. Like, it came with ape hangers, right? And the pointy headlight and everything. And I was like, it's not my style of bike, but I was like, I'm so glad these exist in the world. Because you have to admit, as far as sort of like custom chopper type bikes go, it's on the more tasteful side of things.
Yeah.
Now, I can totally see how some people think the Victory Vision as a touring bike is just going way too far. But I think more people than would admit secretly would look at like the Victory. What was the Bagger Vision? So it just had like the Batwing that was a little bit more like a normal Batwing, not completely, but a little bit more normal, and didn't have like all the crazy other shit on it.
Was that the 8 ball?
No, the 8 ball's another. The 8 ball's a little kind of more just like mid-sized cruiser-ish. I mean, it's still a big bike, but what the fuck was it called? It was the Vision, but like the Bagger Vision. It starts with a V as well. The cross country. Sorry, it's the cross country. Well, bring up a picture just to make sure we are talking about the same thing. I think the Vision's the Vision is the straight up Star Trek bike, right? That has like a lot of like, yeah, Star Trek like Klingon or Vulcan ship like shit going on. The cross country is the. I think a lot more people these days are okay with how the cross country looks than were back in the day. I think it's grown into itself a little bit. I think its look has like aged a little bit, and I think more people these days are like, yeah, that thing's fine. Yeah, I'd have one of those. I think for a touring bike / bagger, this is the deal right now.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get a super clean one for maybe 11,000. I've seen them as cheap as 7 or 8. Again, there's part support. There's nothing fucking wrong with this engine. It's I think there's going to be part support for these for a long time. I think this is the one myself. I would go tell me you wouldn't go for outside of a Goldwing, you wouldn't go for this over just an unknown origin. Some crusty old guys trying to sell you an ultra classic that's had like the exhaust and the fuel system fucked with.
Oh, I'd go for this every
right?
day. Yeah.
You would go for this over
Absolutely.
What's the fucking ridiculous Yamaha bagger that they tried to make to compete with shit like this? The
Venture.
The Venture. You'd have this over a Venture, right?
I would.
Yeah. I mean,
well, so also one of the things I was talking about, there are definitely short-lived Japanese bikes I would strongly avoid. For example, a V4 Venture, I would probably keep away from.
Oh my god, like the plague.
Or a Madura.
Yeah.
The Suzuki Madura. Like, any one of those bikes that only kind of stuck around for 3 or 4 years and then they quickly got away from, like, I would skip those.
If you're getting a Yamaha V4, I really need it to be a VMAX. And you need to buy it knowing it's going to be a problem in your life.
Yeah.
Kind of like how you bought the Italjet. You're like,
Yeah.
I know this is a bad decision, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to regret this so hard, but I don't care. I just have to have this. Right?
Yeah.
That's how you buy a VMAX. Maybe not a 2018 VMAX, but like the originals, like you have to buy it knowing it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So let's go out of tours and just go into just a cruiser then. You're going to buy a cruiser, and again, we're not talking about the one you want. What's going to be the least problem? I would say Honda Shadow, except the Shadow was so bulletproof, people have really fucking tested that. Right?
That's true, yeah.
So there are some sketchy 650 Shadows out there that people have just, again, never changed the oil on. There are some 89 Shadows that have never had the oil changed.
It's conceivable that somebody will sell you a Shadow on Craigslist where they've taken an angle grinder to the frame and not told you about it.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not going to say the Honda Shadow, but just for a cruiser, I kind of have to go Victory again. You'll get a shocking deal on an Octane. And holy shit, there's part support for it because it literally is an Indian Scout.
I think there's a much more obvious answer.
It's the same frame, all that shit.
I think if you want a cruiser and you don't want to deal with any bullshit, the best answer is always going to be a Kawasaki Vulcan.
Fuck, you're right. Even the big one. Yeah, a Vulcan 1500.
Just massive displacement.
1500 or 1600, yeah.
Massive displacement, low compression, liquid cooled, or,
yeah, like
fuel injected from early on.
90 foot-pounds of torque, 66 horsepower, just chug a lug all day. You're right. It's a Vulcan. It's air and liquid cooled. It is. Yeah. You're right.
And
this is how good they are. Dad had that 07 1600. And he bought it from a guy who said, still got the original battery in it. And he bought it in like 2014, had a 7-year-old battery in it. And then Dad rode it for like another 5 years, sold it with the original battery.
yeah.
It was no joke, like an 11-year-old battery. You're right. Yeah, if you're going cruise, I mean, that's kind of a tourer as well, actually. I think we have to say for I think I hate to do this. I have to give up the Victory cross country and give cruiser and tourer to a Vulcan 1500. That's going to be your problem-free miles. There's no ABS or fucking weird shit. Like it's both a complicated and simple bike. It's fuel injected, but there's nothing crazy going on. It's overbuilt, understressed. It does Harley Davidson things better than a Harley Davidson. It'll break 100 miles an hour.
Well, because it was made with all the Japanese engineering at the time, but and with all the precision and with all the technology.
Well, it's the
But they built it to Harley performance numbers of the time. So it's basically take an early 2000s Japanese
it's the
motorcycle.
only time the Japanese have thrown displacement at the problem.
Right. Essentially what they did is they took like the 2000s Japanese like build quality and technology, and then they said, let's go and match displacement, and then we'll detune down to Harley to like evolution motor performance numbers.
Yeah.
It's utterly bulletproof.
You're right. It's Vulcan's your smart fucking money every goddamn time. You're right. Okay. Now we're getting into the territory I wanted to. How are we doing on time?
We're at an hour and a half.
We're at an hour and a half. Okay, let's just do one more category of bike, and then we'll. No. We said okay. We've covered sport bikes, covered tours, we've covered. Okay, let's just do. Yeah, no. We're gonna end it here because anything else we talk about is gonna take like 20 minutes or whatever. Let's do it. Let's say we're gonna put the break in here, and the rest of this episode will be for the Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll just make an edit or something. Yeah, for anyone who's here, just remember, stay safe, stay tuned, and everyone else who's on the Patreon, we'll see you there. Okay, so